And with that, welcome to America's Heroes Group, our roundtable with clean energy infrastructure partner Zodiac Solutions. Today is Saturday, December 3rd, 2022. December is AIDS Awareness Month and National Human Rights Month. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host, Army National Guard veteran. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And ladies and gentlemen, and service members and veterans, we have a familiar voice. Two guys have been with us many times on our show. Rob Howard, he's a U.S. Navy veteran and the president and CEO of Zodiac Solutions, LLC, and Rod Matthew. He is a U.S. Navy veteran also, and the owner of Brevian Energy, specializing in microgrid technologies and renewable energy. And that is a hot topic today because we are in the third industrial revolution, ladies and gentlemen. If you didn't know that already, we're going to talk about Biden's administration's approving $550 million for community-based clean energy. And this is going to be administered through the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block, the EECBG program. So, Mr. Howard, how you doing today? Mr. Matthew, how you doing today?
Glad to see you.
Your
Wow,
audio is out.
finished, huh?
Got to get your audio together. Hold on 1 second. Coming in silent right now. So here we go. Let's try this again. So how are you guys doing today?
Absolutely wonderful. It's great to see you again, Sean.
All right. So what can you tell us about this new approval, what Biden has done to kind of stimulate at the community level clean energy? And that's for Mr. Matthew.
Okay.
Looks like we lost our audio. We lost our audio.
Yeah, I got
trying to get together. I heard a voice. Who was that?
Can you hear me? This is Rob. I actually got disconnected too, but that's okay.
All right. So, Rob, what can you tell us? Mr. Matthew, we can't hear you because our audio is out. But Mr. Howard, what can you tell us about what's going on?
Well, first, while you get Mr. Matthews hooked up, I want to make sure we give a shout out because Brevian Energy was one of the recipients of what they call the Rosie Network. They focus on veteran businesses and how to take them to the next level. So he's been a recipient of that program, and he'll get a chance to tell you a little bit about it. But with regard to this grant, it's really important for people to recognize that this funding is going to be available specifically through state, city, and counties, which will allow you to actually, I was breaking down the actual individual dollars, and it looks like this going to be a supplement to what the cities and counties have going on or are planning to do. It's real important to start getting ready because most of the projects that I've been a part of that have to deal with government takes a long time. And so the fact that they're getting this out now, the awards don't even start, or the application doesn't start till January. However, people need to be planning today. So everything from solar projects on government installations. One of the things that we see are really easy to do are parking lots. However, where we miss it is that oftentimes we forget that we need the entire microgrid. In the state of California is actually overbuilt on solar because solar is only available when the sun is shining, right? Mm-hmm. What about the rest of 2/3 of the day? Mm-hmm. So you need that entire microgrid, and that's where Brevian comes in because that's their actual expertise and how we plan this out. So we've been talking to different cities. Recognize you need to check the numbers. Your city might not be large enough to apply for this particular grant, but there's still other avenues and ways to credit, particularly from the Infrastructure Act. There's funding available, but again, you have to do the planning.
There we go. I think that's smart words. So this is a $550 million program. There's about, from what I understand, this is what's reported about. It's to affect about 250 million people, which is almost the entire nation. When you think about it, 250 million people supposed to benefit from this. Mr. Matthews, we got your audio back together. What can you explain a little bit more about how this is going to unfold and what the program's all about?
Well, sorry for the technical problems there, but yes, like Rob mentioned before, the government is allocating funds to these communities that qualify, that meet the requirements, of the grant, to get more stabilized power, more decentralized power, get power that's much more affordable in these communities and much more resilient. So we don't have to worry about their particular investor-owned utilities in their area taking advantage of them, raising their utility rates, and having a grid that's really unreliable for them. So this will allow these communities to generate their own power. Like you see here in California, in particular, there is a move to form what's called community choice aggregation or community choice energy programs, where these individual municipalities are combining their efforts to now they are buying power at a little bit more reduced rate than the investor-owned utilities can provide for them, and still provide great service for their customers. So we're seeing things like that roll out across the country, and we're very excited about the opportunities that involve that.
I think that's important. Our apologies for the audio snap. It was actually our fault. But the thing is that I think it's really important for people to understand is that, you know, we have seen massive increases in utility rates over the last few years. And with this hyperinflation economy, I hesitate to use that word, but this really bad inflation we got going on in this country, where people are very concerned about what is ahead as far as us moving into the winter, and also as the temperatures drop and heating bills go up. You know, how are people going to be able to afford these $100, $200, $300, $500 gas bills, utility bills around the colder states in this country? Now, one of the things we talk about with the importance of microgrids is the fact that our infrastructure, our electrical grid, is outdated, and it needs to be upgraded substantially. And from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, both of you, is we need to, even if we could get online a lot of the renewable energy sources and things like that, our infrastructure can't even handle the influx of power, because the potential people don't realize is that the renewable energy sources that are the technologies that are being developed, it seems that it can actually surpass the type of power that you get from fossil fuels, from the traditional ways of getting energy. You throw nuclear into that mix as well, and you got really an abundance of energy that could be produced, but we got to have the infrastructure in place to do it. So how can microgrid solve that problem? Mr. Howard, what do you say about that?
Yeah, the easiest way to think about it is when power is generated, the grid is necessary to get it to your house. But if cities decide we're going to create local power, because again, oftentimes diverse communities were usually the ones who were victims of fossil fuel with power plants, which means they were polluting the community. You're talking about accelerated rates of asthma and other issues. Microgrids allow you to do green power locally, fewer or shorter transmission to the end user, and that's where the microgrids come in. And also they're scalable. So if I have a city with 30,000 people, I can put together microgrids inside that city to fit that. But if I got 1.5 million people, I'm scaling up to fit the need. And so you've got a couple of things happening. The utilities are going to be raising rates. Why? Because as you get more renewable, most of them have agreements with their public utility organizations. In California, the Public Utilities Commission, that they're going to make a certain amount of money. Well, when people and businesses get solar and microgrids, what happens is they raise the rates on those who don't have it. So cities must begin to make the transition, or else they'll be at the whim of the investor-owned utility. And the other piece is, one of the things is not just the cities, but nonprofit organizations, Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCA. They're all struggling for funding situations. But if we can help you lower your utility bill by 1/3, your bottom line just increased. So not only are the microgrids shorter distance to the end user, they also are reliable. They also are better for the planet. I mean, it's a common sense thing, but we have to get to the business side of it to make it work. We've got to get the planning together. We've got the people to put the funding streams in line, and we have to actually be okay shifting our paradigm and recognizing that we can't count on investor-owned utilities to give us our power, because we are going to get to a point to where we cannot afford it.
Mr. Matthews, what can you add to
I
that?
think one of the things that's really missed about the whole thing is the security aspect of this. Because by implementing microgrids, we can decentralize our grid, right? So right now, you can take out one part of the grid and take down a whole section of the grid because it's all centralized, controlled by a couple of different generating authorities. But if you decentralize the grid, that makes it much more resilient. So if there is a natural event or even a localized event, it only affects that local area or those one or two particular installations, and everybody else is producing their own power. It's not affected.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great point.
I remember here maybe 5 years ago or so, there was a situation here where a guy was changing out a fuse in Arizona and blacked out power for the whole Southern California.
Wow. That is
because
crazy.
It's all centralized. But if that was decentralized, if you had your own microgrid, you wouldn't even had any clue that was even going on, except for have your lights on and all your neighbors wouldn't.
And I think that's important to talk about because of the fact that we're in this world today where technology, unfortunately, computer viruses, things like that. I mean, governments, foreign actors that come in can get into the computer grid or the grid and actually use a computer to shut down the power grid and disrupt service. And seeing parts of the chunks of the country lose power, that is something that we definitely need to get on top of. Do you see bipartisan support for this technology and for the development of the green? No.
I would say that when there's a one party, when they speak of energy, they talk about fossil fuel as energy, which oil is oil. There's a process to make it energy, right? To convert it to energy. And so they make it appear that, we're having an issue because we don't have enough energy because we're not taking it out of the ground and burning it and endangering the planet. When we can easily adapt these technologies, we can roll these out in mass and decentralize the grid, make everything much more affordable, and be much more responsible to the planet. So, no, I don't think there's real bipartisan support for these technologies.
That's crazy.
That's why we have to take advantage of it right now, and we have an administration that is much more favorable to these, and they really accept the fact that there is climate change in order to do this. So we should take advantage of it while we have an opportunity to do so.
You mentioned that. I feel sorry for the state of Florida because the governor there, he actually made it public recently. Somebody brought to my attention, sent me a YouTube clip of the fact that he's upset about the idea, it seems like, of people talking about climate change and and even investment firms that are into trying to invest in these types of technologies and things like that. Wants to divest from these types of these massive, large investment companies who are really or if anybody is trying to do something that's going to just make the world not necessarily a better place, but looking out for their own best interest, it's a financial institution. Financial institutions are more important to them as their bottom line, saving money, making money. They're not worried. They don't care about political agendas or anything. And all they're looking for is to make sure that they can make money for the next 100 years and so on. And if they're investing in green technology, that tells you that there's something legitimate about it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be spending billions of dollars into that infrastructure. And then you have, and what my other concern is that you have China and the EU. It seems like these guys they're taking it real serious, and they're going. I think the European Union has something like 18% of their operations in the country are based on renewable energy right now, and China wants to get to 60% soon. So what are we doing?
I had a guy. I had a meeting one time with a gentleman from, I won't name the bank, but the bank was going through some issues, but he was a part of the global energy portion where they were actually funding global projects across the globe. And he told me, he said, we understand what we need to do. In countries like China, they just say, let's do it. He said, the beautiful thing about America is we get to discuss and argue and talk about everything. He said, but the bad thing about America is we get to discuss and argue about a lot of these things instead of really putting our foot down and moving it forward. A lot of that discussion, again, I really appreciate working with Rob because his thought process is where you are. It's actually ahead of where the rest of the country is and where we need to get to. If we do not change the bottom line for regular people in the communities, it's going to get worse. You lose money because, again, the model of large investor-owned utilities doesn't work for the average consumer. And with security threats, with climate threats, at the end of the day, why are we not trying to take this funding? That's why I'm telling everybody, while you have an administration that is investing in this now, because, again, we have to keep moving the ball forward. We need to be investing in our local communities now, and these cities that are struggling with their budgets, start switching to renewable. One of your payroll and then utilities. Those are two of your largest costs. So let's work on the utility one, because you can control that very easily by developing, growing, and implementing these microgrids, saving the planet at the same time. But even if you don't believe it's real, you will save on your bottom line. So sometimes it just frustrates me, because it's like we spend a lot of time with elected officials doing presentations and having a conversation, because you would be amazed at how many people just simply don't understand how it works.
Really?
And so that's why these types of investments, like what we're talking about today, you got to start working on them.
So do you think a lot of cities around the country will start taking advantage of these types of grants for these programs that Biden's rolling out?
I actually don't
Absolutely.
think
I do, because
why do you not think it's going to work?
Well, for me, I don't care about the political affiliation. They all love money, and if there's money available to do whatever, then they're advocates for that whenever money is available. So now this money is available, I do think that a lot of the cities will take advantage of it. Mm-hmm. Probably some more so than others, but I do believe that money is available, that they will use it to its fullest advantage, no matter what the political persuasion.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I don't think they're going to do it until we can explain to them how much they save. When they see the savings are there, then they start to move.
But there's one thing I'm concerned about, and there is a group. What's this group? I wrote this down. So we have the API, which is, I had it written down here. I lost it for a second. Anyway, it's not important. But anyways, there's a lot of petroleum and oil-based advocacy groups and things along those lines that also support the politicians and also sponsor their platforms, both sides, Democrat and Republican. So they have an entrenched interest, because for so many decades we have built a multi-billion-dollar industry on fossil fuels. And trying to promote ideas like fracking and deep sea oil drilling and putting in more gas pipelines across the country and things along those lines, as opposed to getting online with the inevitable electrification, the re-electrification of America, because everything is going to be electric 20 years from now. Cars are going to be electric, buses are going to be electric, everything's going to be electric 20 years from now. There's not going to be a strong demand as much as it was in the past for natural gas and even oil. And we're seeing this even in the job industry. There's right now, renewable energy has surpassed coal in jobs. What is it? So you have 4 million jobs in renewable energy versus 160,000 in coal. There's 10 million jobs in oil and natural gas. So this 20, 30 years ago, there were barely any jobs in renewable energy. And just in the last 20 years, they're growing at a rate of 20% a year since 2002. The renewable energy, as far as job creation, as far as the industry itself growing and expanding, so they're going to catch up to natural gas and oil and pass it within the next 20 years. So what do we need to do?
It's an inevitability.
Yeah. So what do we need to do as veterans to try to get to not fall behind the trend and fall behind the curve with the rest of the world, who's already competing at another level because they realize they can save money with renewable energy?
Well, to me, with all of the statistics that you just quoted, I see opportunity. And one of the things that we learn in the military is to be independent and do things to help out our fellow people. So one of the things I know in the military that helped me was it taught me it gave me an entrepreneurial spirit, right? There are several opportunities out there. As you say, you'll see this industry just growing exponentially over the next 10 to 20 years. So there are several opportunities for entrepreneurs to start companies or to render products and services to help to move this industry forward. I know there's an organization called the Rosie Network that is really key in helping veterans get the skills to really become those entrepreneurs, providing them those resources. So that's one thing that I think is going to happen is a lot of veteran entrepreneurs are going to be out there popping up, and we have organizations like the Rosie Network to help those veterans really maneuver what it takes to get their companies off the ground and get them rolling.
Now, Mr. Howard, my question to you is, are there any set-asides or grants available with these new fundings and approvals that have taken place recently for the average everyday person, particularly veterans? Because, a lot of these programs favor veterans or try to give opportunity to veterans. What can the average person do to get some of this money to try and develop green technology or microgrids in their own community?
I would say
about 10 seconds left to say no.
Yeah, the quickest part is connecting with groups like the Rosie Network because they tell you the skill set necessary to do that work. Funding is about research and opportunity. The funding is there, but you have to do the research. That's why we're digging into these, and I know we're running close on time, but we'll send you the link for the Rosie Network as an example and some other opportunities where veterans can dig in, start getting the information, and start the process. Let's enjoy the journey. Not just the destination. We are on a journey of energy independence, and this is how we do it.
This is America's Heroes Group. You just heard from Rob Howard. He is the U.S. Navy veteran and president and CEO of Zodiac Solutions, and Rod Matthews, U.S. Navy veteran and owner of Brevian Energy, specializing in microgrid technologies and renewable energy. We'll be right back.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.
We have in our chase bags, we have a care package of hygiene, we have shaving equipment, we have razors, and for the women we have the same personal hygiene items for them as well. And we want to say thank you for their service. This is Chase Bank. Thank you very much. People in the neighborhood, free haircuts, and service and food. Look good. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you,
Okay. On behalf of Cliff Kelley, America's Heroes Group, we sincerely thank Chase Bank for coming where it matters to help homeless veterans have a hot meal today and a care package. We are sincerely grateful for this partnership. Yes.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group. Hear your voice where we connect the disconnected intentionally.
Is Cliff Kelley, the governor of talk radio, the icon of radio throughout the world.
Chauncey Spencer II and I, again, share a special relationship. His late great father, Tuskegee Airman Chauncey E. Spencer, took me as a child on my first airplane ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is something that people need to see. Often we don't, do the things to show how great our people are. It changes the paradigm of how people think about us, about the collective consciousness of what it means to be us.
And we've been having great conversations.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group, our roundtable and partner, the Veterans Legislative Voice. Today is Saturday, December 3rd, 2022. December is AIDS Awareness and National Human Rights Month. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And we have another familiar voice in the line, Miss Stephanie Kalota. She's a U.S. Army Reserve Sergeant First Class, the veteran and founder and creator of the Veterans Legislative Voice. And we're going to talk about an article that came up in the Chicago Crusader in a section called Voices. And it was called, Why is this Georgia Senate Runoff Election Still Matters? To achieve restitution for Black World War II veterans. It's in the Saturday, November 26th edition of the Chicago Crusader. What do you have to say about that, Stephanie? You wrote this article. You have a lot of things that I think is important and things that people, it's kind of a touchy and hot button. What's going on?
Well, one of the reasons why this bill is so important for Black World War II veterans is because the person that has introduced this bill and has been championing for it is currently going on in a runoff election for Georgia, Senator Raphael Warnock. And he has been working on this bill to try to get this passed to get restitution for all of these Black World War II veterans and their families.
So this is something that has been talked about a lot, not just in the veteran community, but also and through American history. The idea of restitution and the idea of people not realizing that a lot of the benefits and programs that the United States have implemented have excluded African Americans, and that's throughout history. And the GI Bill and a lot of the benefits and education benefits and the housing benefits for veterans has also been exclusionary, which is not good. And we have it's actually a term for it. Benefits obstruction is what we call it in the real world. So so what is important as far as the Senate majority is already going Democratic, and in the article you wrote that it seems like Republicans are against this, Democrats are for this. Democrats have the majority in the Senate, however, the Republicans have the majority in the House. How does this play out as far as the likelihood of something being done?
Well, for while the Democrats have the majority in the Senate, although by a hair, for majority of congressional bills like this one, it requires 60 votes instead of 51. So if we would get Senator Raphael Warnock to win this runoff election, we would have 51 likely votes for this bill. It is true, Democrats are more likely to be in favor in this. I haven't seen very many Republicans sign on as co-sponsors or thrown any really emphasis that way. So it's kind of a hot issue there. So Senator Warnock has already started a lot of work to try to get all of the negotiations and things approved so everybody's happy to vote for this bill. It basically would have to start over if he is not elected in this runoff election and has to go practically start over again with and who else that are still in the Senate. So it would be a big setback for Black World War II veterans and their families.
So what's actually in the bill? What does the bill actually say?
So the bill would actually say for current Montgomery GI Bill benefits and for the home loans, that would actually add an eligibility for Black World War II veterans and their descendants. So that's a big new one now because we have so few Black World War II veterans or even World War II veterans in general. I think we're at 100,000 now when there were millions of them. And so it's kind of scary. So they're counting kids, grandkids, and they are also looking into any other direct descendants included on that. So that would actually help out many Black families across the nation because there is a difference in, how there's a pay difference. There is really a wealth difference between any of the other demographics. And it would actually help out this economy to then have more people in school, have more educated workforce. It would actually cause a lot of really good things to help with the pending recession that we are supposed to be having, although that is highly contested, but it would actually help boost this economy.
And I think that's really important you mentioned, because it's not just something that's helping out. When you do things that are unfair and things that are discriminatory and at a government level, in your society, in your culture, we're talking about the American society, we're talking about the American culture, we're talking about the American history. It actually hurts America overall.
Yes.
So
yes, it does.
I think you make up a good point with that.
Yes, because from World War II, when the veterans came back, they still couldn't afford very much because they had issues trying to get jobs. Jim Crow was in its height. There was a lot of things that were going on that was also discriminatory because they were Black. And so it's one of those things that it would have given a lot of step up in that way, so then there would be more wealth for the descendants down the road, and their descendants would be in a much better place. These guys serve the country, they risk their lives, and then they don't get these benefits, and it also hurts all of their descendants down the road. And then so it's this horrible cycle of trying to think of a good bad word for it, or good word for the situation, but it's a horrible cycle that they go through because they can't afford certain things. They were also veterans, so then they were also more likely to be denied their VA disability in general, with the combat fatigue and all of this that is systemicness that keeps passing on generation by generation. This will help many people out with this.
And the thing I think people also have to realize as well is that when you look at American history, which we oftentimes like to sweep under the carpet, there is a tendency for groups of and certain interests in the country to try to sanitize and also sweep under the carpet some of the inequities of the country. But the thing is, in order to heal and to become a stronger nation, you got to own up to. That's what we taught in the military. Own up to and take responsibility for the things that you do, good and bad. You can't get better unless you admit that you screwed up. Then you got it wrong. And we all make mistakes. We all do dumb things. And at the local level, individually, at society levels, we do dumb things all the time. When we rolled out all these different types of programs, the GI Bill, the Homestead Act, you look at, the fact that after Reconstruction, you had a lot of African Americans getting into politics and building thriving, vibrant, strong, economically strong communities, not just in St. Louis, not just in Missouri, which was in the in pop culture, with the movies and documentaries coming about that, but all over the country. Here in Chicago, Bronzeville is a perfect example of that. Same thing happened here in Chicago. Same thing happened across the country. Race riots, people burning down towns because they weren't willing to relinquish or share the power to someone who they thought was different, or what they used to subjugate. So the person who used to subjugate now is has a seat at the table, making decisions that for their own future and their own destiny, and also for the country as a whole. And there was reprisal for that. There were repercussions for that. There were people that without any protection, African American communities that were vibrant, wealthy, and powerful were burned to the ground. Thousands of people were killed. Children and women were murdered with gun violence, burned in their own homes. This is real history, okay? We weren't allowed to participate in the Homestead Act in large numbers. Sure, a few of us got through, but it wasn't rolled out to the entire community. So you were uplifting and putting in social programs for the mainstream white community, but trying your damnedest to exclude Black American citizens who paid their dues over and over and over again, broke their neck to join the military, to fight overseas in a time when it was Jim Crow, when there was racial discrimination. You can't even get a burger at a cafeteria restaurant that says white only, but you can go overseas and nearly die for your country. Not even given the full respect to be a regular soldier, have to serve in segregated regiments, segregated units, and things like that. And then all of a sudden, you see the POWs, some of the Nazis and the Germans that you're fighting against, getting treated better than you.
Yep. Generational trauma, that was the word I was looking for. Sorry. It's a vicious cycle of generational trauma that happens. That just keeps going and keeps flowing. This is a way to try to correct that. And another thing that could actually help, many of us veterans laughed at the confusion that the Army Secretary, she was confused on why we had such an issue with recruiting and retention. Of course, us veterans would kind of giggle at that because, you know what, really? Because we've been telling you.
Right.
And this could actually cause one of those things to unintentionally help with recruiting and retention, because if they are finally treating these veterans and their families right, there is more likely that these people and these families will then sign up. Mm-hmm. It is a high tide low. It's a very low amount of people now that are signing up that came from military families. That has dropped dramatically in the past couple of decades. And this could be something that could reverse that unintentionally for, actually good purposes. And also, hey, it would educate them before they even go in the military. They can be officers. We need more black officers in the military. We need black commanders there, because Mormon minorities in those high positions could actually help and benefit everybody for the all.
I think that's what Will said, I think. And also, this bill, from what I understand, if it's passed, will allow the descendants of World War II veterans, Black World War II veterans, to go to college or buy a house under the home loan program, and then also to go to school under the GI Bill.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something that is due to that family. I mean, unfortunately, we can't go back in time and award all of those African American veterans who were denied their benefits. This flat out told no. Even though they were supposed to get it on paper, did everything they were supposed to do, but then denied the benefit, or dishonorably discharged intentionally after they've done their service so that they couldn't qualify for benefits.
Yes, because black veterans or black service members from World War II had a higher amount of discharge. They were dishonorably discharged. 39% of all black service members between August and November 1946, 39% were dishonorably discharged versus white service members, that was at 21.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty scary when that stuff is going on. And it's still today, black service members are still getting harsher punishments. They are more likely to be pretrial confined. They are more likely to be dishonorably discharged. And then there was a lawsuit recently that had been filed because they are more likely to get denied their VA disability, even today. So if we could start with correcting our history, hopefully we can correct the present and the future.
And what do you think the likelihood is? So if Warnock does win, what do you think the likelihood of this passing is?
Well, it will have to. I'm hoping that it's a very good. I have a very optimistic feeling about this one. I know it probably will not pass by the end of this congressional session, which would be the end of this month. So if he is reelected, the bill can be reintroduced, because all bills die at the end of this month. And trying not to sound like the Schoolhouse Rock right now for that song.
Only a bill on Capitol Hill.
Yes. So it would be reintroduced. There's a lot of talks right now. They have not officially put out the actual budget or estimates that would be attached to these bills. It's fairly high, but there is talks about separating the two benefits, having one just for the home loans and then one for the Montgomery GI Bill. There is a likelihood that one of them at least will pass if they are separated, but that is kind of scary because then the other one might not. Mm-hmm. And so those are the type of things that are being discussed and compromised, going through all of the committee and all of the different rigmarole processes that happens in the House and the Senate. So I'm very optimistic for the next 2 years, for the next congressional session.
So why the pushback? What is the pushback? What's the arguments against it? I mean, we know that. I mean, not to be political, because I'm apolitical when it comes to politics. When it comes to like parties and stuff.
I try so hard to be. I try so hard to be neutral, but it is difficult at times. But yes, it's cost.
Okay. But the cost. Yeah, but think about all the stuff we spend. See, when people say cost, that always to me is smokescreen for not something that's not really the case, because the fact is that most of these programs don't cost that much money compared to what you spend money on.
Yes.
So when you talk about cost, but you'll waste money on some of the dumbest things that we don't even use. But
right.
Invest a fraction of that into something that actually can have a profound impact and improve the economy and actually save you money in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah, they spent. NASA spent millions of dollars trying to figure out how to use a pen in space. So, no gravity pen, while the Russians used a pencil.
Right.
So, my favorite comparison for it. So those type of things do happen. It's really frustrating. And the other frustrating part is that technically, it's like these benefits should have already been paid out.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's doing the right thing. It's owning up to what you did wrong. It's not like you're saying, even if you're against the idea of handouts, you're not giving a handout. You're actually paying up a bill that you owe.
Yes.
Because someone already did their part. And in a most egregious manner, in a most un-American, unpatriotic manner, in a most racist manner, you would deny someone puts their life in the line to, and not even that wasn't even a reason why they're going into this in the first place. They're doing it because they want to prove themselves as Americans. And as the byproduct of that, they're supposed to get benefits.
Well, they were also drafted. Mm-hmm. Many of them were also drafted. They didn't really have a choice in the matter. And it's not like that they could suddenly have bone spurs.
Right.
So, sorry.
Right, yeah. But the amazing part about it in Black culture and Black history, there was an unusually large number of Native American and African American people that joined the military, that volunteered, lined up to volunteer, because they would have a better situation. Mm-hmm. And it's sad. Some of them thought that, but from my own family history and from reading the stories from World War II vets, many of them did it because they just wanted to prove that they were, they thought it was an opportunity to improve their situation, at least in the eyes of perception, being able to be seen as capable as Americans and as able to enjoy and worthy to enjoy all the freedoms and liberties that their white counterparts could get. Because when you go overseas, you wear that uniform, and you can come back and say, I'm a World War II veteran, and I have these medals, and all these units that serve with distinction, the Tuskegee Airmen, as one of the many units that were that. I don't think not one of them, correct me if I'm wrong, got a Medal of Honor.
I don't think they have, and the closest they've gotten, I believe, is a Congressional Gold Medal. For the unit, but I need to check that one out. It's frustrating that they approve so many awards and medals, but then they don't go back and right the wrongs.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. There's legions of stories of African Americans and the stuff that would make superheroes look weak.
Yes.
Like comic book superheroes look like jokers or whatever. I mean, they were doing some amazing things under the most unbelievable circumstances for what?
Yeah. Yes, I completely agree, because all of that, it's frustrating. There was actually a Black veteran from, I believe it was from Operation Iraqi Freedom, and everything was approved, but then it sat in that current president administration, I think for like 10 months, and did not move. Wow. And it was so frustrating. And once it started catching the attention with the news and the media, it finally miraculously got approved, and they had the ceremony. It was also posthumously, so he had already passed. But it's one of those things that you could kind of see systemically happening anywhere with generations. And this bill would actually try to right the wrongs and hopefully right more wrongs in the process.
I just see it as just paying a bill that you owe. I mean, it's something. It's not like, I mean, it's not even. I mean, you're never going to be able to correct the fact, the damage has been done, but you can ameliorate it to some extent. You can all, but the more important thing is you owe these people.
Yes. And so here's some numbers for you, because I know that this is really important for everybody to understand as well. So for the Black World War II veterans, when they were trying to get their VA home loans, they found that during 1947 in 13 Mississippi cities, only 2 of the 3,200 VA home loans for Black veterans were approved. Only 2.
That's crazy.
In the same year for New York and New Jersey, only 100 were approved out of 67,000 VA loans. So it wasn't just in the South. It was also in many other areas. So it's really scary. Black World War II veterans, only about 6% earned a college degree, compared to their white counterparts that's 19%. So more than double. And it's pretty scary. Majority of a lot of Black veterans were in the South at the time, and they had trouble even just getting enrolled because they could only go to the historically Black colleges back then. Many of the segregations were still in effect, so all of those colleges were overrun and overwhelmed by the demand, and they were not properly funded to expand and meet the need. So even if they were approved, they had a difficulty even trying to get in. So it would.
Go ahead.
So there was just so much more than just being denied. It was also not the support for any of the other benefits that they were trying to get.
And you throw in the historical problems of redlining. They already have discrimination and finance anyway through banks. You weren't really any mainstream banks in Black communities at that time. So you had to go to Black banks, and then that trickle-down effect of those investments. So once again, you go look at what created the white middle class in America. Well, a lot of these programs, like the Homestead Act, like the GI Bill, these programs helped build the highway system. And when Eisenhower came back from World War II, became president of the United States, he created a highway system. He saw what they were doing in Germany, loved the Autobahn, and said, hey, let's do this in America. We need this for national security. What were those highways used for? They were used to segregate and also separate Black communities from white communities as well, to divide up the nation as a byproduct. And then so and all also that
displaced. Displaced many Black communities because they decided to go through those communities. There's a lot of that happening because I'm from currently living in St. Pete, and they're still trying to fight for restitutions on that because they were not even compensated for the land that they got from them.
Wow.
Yes. So a lot of big things. Here's another number for you. The reason why I brought up the wealth gap and the pay for the current families between the demographics. From the 2019 census, white households had an average wealth of $76,000. In comparison to Black households, Black households were at $46,000. $30,000 gap. And it could be nailed all the way to the Black veterans, World War II veterans that did not get this, so they can get the degrees, earn more money, and help out their families and get a better life for their descendants.
So billions of dollars that's missing out of the Black community because of the exclusion and benefits obstruction that took place after World War II, just after that one conflict.
Yes. And it's so scary and it's so upsetting for this. So I want to let everybody know, if you are a descendant for a World War II veteran, or you know somebody that's a descendant of a World War II veteran, or you're a spouse of a World War II veteran, you can call up your congressman. You can call up Senator Warnock's office and let them know, hey, this bill would change my life and my family's lives. You write a letter, call them up any way you can, because they want personal stories. They want to hear from people that this would be affected with. They will read out personal stories in the middle of the Senate when it comes up for a vote. They could read your story to make the change to get more people to vote for it.
This is my last question. We have about 2 minutes left, about a minute and a half left, roughly. So, from what I understand about you, I've known you for a couple of years now, it seems. And so, you're a white woman.
Yes.
Okay. So, how does a white woman write such an article for a black newspaper called Chicago Crusader?
I am also a minority. I identify actually as gender fluid. I am a pansexual, and I am also my grandfather was a Korean War veteran who was actually closeted gay and did not come out until I was about 7 years old.
Wow.
There's a lot of minorities and different things that I feel like it bridges, and I hope it bridges, because I have seen different things happen, and I can only imagine what people of other minorities have gone through. And so I try to put myself in their shoes because of the experiences that I've gone through. And thank you for asking that.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Stephanie. You always have great information, and I'm always impressed by the integrity and also the diligence and the thoroughness of your work. You do a lot of great journalistic work, and also you're a great advocate for veterans across the country, and you're doing so much to really bring awareness to everybody that's listening.
Thank you. I love you. I love Glenda. Thank you so much, guys.
Stephanie Kalota, U.S. Army U.S. Reserve Sergeant First Class, and a founder and creator of the Veterans Legislative Voice. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.
We have in our chase bags, we have a care package of hygiene, we have shaving equipment, we have razors, and for the women we have the same personal hygiene items for them as well. And we want to say thank you for their service. This is Chase Bank. Thank you very much.
People in the neighborhood, free haircuts, and service and food. Look good.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service.
Okay. On behalf of Cliff Kelley, America's Heroes Group, we sincerely thank Chase Bank for coming where it matters to help homeless veterans have a hot meal today and a care package. We are sincerely grateful for this partnership. Yeah.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group. Hear your voice where we connect the disconnected intentionally.
Who is Cliff Kelley, the governor of talk radio, the icon of radio throughout the world.
Chauncey Spencer II and I, again, share a special relationship. His late great father, Tuskegee Airman Chauncey E. Spencer, took me as a child on my first airplane ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is something that people need to see. Often we don't, do the things to show how great our people are. It changes the paradigm of how people think about us, about the collective consciousness of what it means to be us.
Oh. And we've been having great conversations about trying to get more African Americans into aviation. And we got a bill that we're trying to get passed that would allow the Pell Grant to be used to help finance aviation education.
This is where I started with this entire conversation by saying, if it were not for America's Heroes Group, I would have given up. So I want to get all my accolades out the way on behalf of America's Heroes Group. Ms. Glenda, thank you. Thank you for encouraging me to press on. I would encourage you all to support this organization. One thing for sure, America's Hero Group is out there. Ms. Glenda will take the time. Ms. Glenda Smith will take the time to listen to you and to steer you in the direction that you need to go.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family. Welcome to America's Heroes Group, with information and resources that's disseminated intentionally to empower our military population, with host Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelley, co-host Iraq veteran Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, and co-host Army National Guard veteran Sean Claiborne. And now, America's Heroes Group.
Media programming. We are a roundtable talk show where information, resources, and referrals are provided intentionally every Saturday to empower our military population on WVON 1690 AM, the iHeart Radio app from 4 to 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Please visit our website at www.americashg.org.
What's going on? Yeah, what's going on?
Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelley and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to America's Heroes Group on WVON 1690 AM, the Talk of Chicago. I am Vietnam veteran host Cliff Kelley. America's Heroes Group is a live streaming podcast, global platform, radio, print, and digital media broadcast show that empowers change agents through intentionally disseminating information, resources, and referrals to empower our military population.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group, our roundtable. This time, we are globally connected with Military Families Matters with our partner, family caregiver Keisha L. Jackson. Today, it's Saturday, December 3rd, 2022. December is AIDS Awareness and National Human Rights Month. You just heard our host, Cliff Kelley, at the break. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And we have our partner, Keisha L. Jackson. She's a U.S. Air Force veteran and family caregiver. And we're going to talk about certain things that are important to caregivers. We do this every once in a while. How you doing, Keisha?
I am doing great, Sean. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. So how was your holiday?
It was pretty good. I was pretty much ate and was on the couch after that for a few hours. But it was good. I had a good time with family.
So tell me, how has it been for you being a family caregiver? What types of tips would you say are important? And do you think it's more of a challenge being an African American female and a family caregiver? Are there different struggles that you need to think about versus, maybe someone in a different situation?
Yeah, I do. The first part about being a challenge is one of the things when I think about caregivers is that it's not something that you prepare for. You may prepare to have a child, you may prepare to get married, you may prepare to go into the military, to college, but most people don't prepare to be a caregiver. And so because of that, a lot of times you are thrust into that role of being a caregiver. And a lot of times when I'll share, about caring for my mom, that was one of the things. My mom had never been sick. Maybe when I was about 12, my mother had gallstones. And then when I found out that she had stage 4 inoperable lung cancer, it was because I got a phone call and found out that she was in the hospital. And when I got there, the doctor said that she had stage 4 inoperable lung cancer that had metastasized into her ribs. And so that was one of those situations for me that I was just thrust into the role. Now, as for a black female, most definitely. I mean, there's statistics out there that say that the African-American community is more underrepresented in terms of being caregivers, in terms of the financial support that we get. And with me, in terms of my mom, and even after caring for my brother, one of the reasons why I became an advocate for caregiving is because I would go to conferences and different type of workshops, and I found a lot of resources and information that was being shared, but not many people of color and even fewer men were there to learn about those resources.
Wow. And so how has it been since your mother passed? Has it been tough emotionally to try to go through the holidays and go through things? How was that transition? So you're in a situation where you're taking care of somebody and dependent upon somebody, or someone's depending on you, I should say, and you're in a routine that all of a sudden that abruptly changed when that person passes.
It's ebb and flow. And, I tell people that's the saying about when to turn lemons into lemonade, but I like to say sometimes you don't have sugar in a situation to make it sweet. You just have to deal with how the situation is. But so what I do is when I think about my mom, of course, my mom and I, we were extremely close. She used to call me her best friend. I was able to use some of the experiences that I had caring for my mom to be able to help others. I come from a very large family, so even after caring for my mom, 6 months after caring for my mom, one of my brothers fell. He was placed on life support, so I wound up being his caregiver. So some of the painful experiences that I learned with my mom, I was able to use those to help my brother and some other people. So, yeah, definitely painful. I miss her a lot, but one of the things that my mom even said, it just came back to my mind, is that the experiences that I gained from helping her through her situation that it would be good to help others. And so that's what I've been doing.
So one other thing before we have, you have brought us a special guest. I want to get to him in a second. But before we do that, while you get set up, I wanted to ask you, importantly, what are some things that people need to do to get prepared as a family caregiver? Because the things we don't prepare for will hurt us.
Yeah, one of the things is just talk about it. Talk about it early. Talk about situations. Find about your family members, their bank account, their PIN. If the person is in the military, find out more about their military history. So should you need it, sometimes you don't know their blood type. You don't know their insurance information. There is a list of things that maybe we can just, talk after a doctor.
Hello, it's Keisha. We just lost you. Keisha? Still there? Robert, can you hear us? So I get our audio together. Keisha?
Can you hear me?
There you are.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know how much of that you got, but there's just a list of things that we can talk about in terms of helping our loved ones. We can talk about caregivers from a broad perspective, about roles in being a caregiver, about their PIN, bank accounts, their DD-214, learning about their military history. There's just a lot of different things that we can talk about before there comes a need to have to talk about those things.
Okay. So you brought us a guest today, and that's Robert W. Turner II. He's a former professional football player and is currently an assistant professor in the Department of Clinical Research and Leadership at the George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences. Mr. Turner, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly. So you want to talk about something very important. That's the black male caregiver, and also people that suffer from dementia and the roles and challenges that brings. What can you tell us about that in your experiences? And you have a great career. We'll get to that in a little bit, a wonderful career, and a lot of things you've been working on and doing since the NFL and since your career in football. But what do you have to tell us about being a black caregiver as a man?
Well, I think that the most important thing for your audience and for all of us to understand, and I'm a caregiver myself, as well as being a doctor that researches caregiving. My dad served in the military as a staff sergeant. He was in for about 9 years, and then and so I take care of him. But one of the things that people really kind of need to understand is when we think about black men or we think about caregivers altogether, particularly in the black community, we don't think about men that often. And I'd like your audience to recognize that anywhere between the literature suggests what sparse literature there is that anywhere from 35 to 40% of all unpaid caregivers in the community are by men. And men have some kind of unique challenges in the fact that we know that caregiving can provide, it can really be taxing, it can be very stressful, and if you don't manage your own health properly, and we know that black men have some really kind of challenges in terms of worse outcomes and at high risk for, high blood pressure, all kinds of things. And so that's probably one of the most important things is men don't seek out their own health care. And then when they are put in a position of the stress of providing care for someone else, it makes them very vulnerable. And you can't take care of somebody else unless your own health is managed well.
Now, a reason why I think it's important that I think it gives you a perspective that's unique because you were in the NFL. You played professional football for many years. You played in the CFL. You played in the USFL. You're also a Chicago Bear, which is important to us here in Chicago. So
well, I have to say, I wasn't a Bear. I was a 49er, so that was a little bit of a difference there. But yeah, I can't claim to be a Chicago.
So we got to clean up your Wikipedia page because they have you down as a Chicago Bear for about 2 weeks.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, then I didn't even. You know what? I didn't even know I had a Wikipedia page.
Yeah, you got a
so there you go.
Yeah, they have you down with the Jets, and they also have you down with I think it was I don't know another team, but yeah, they don't have San Francisco down there at all. So,
okay,
so I got to take back the Bear.
Your audience doesn't get upset with me.
So you're not a proud Bear, unfortunately, but it is what it is. So now, but the reason why I think that's important as far as what we're talking about on a more serious note, you guys have gone through tremendous trauma on your bodies, and a career in professional football can put you into situations where you suffer as you get older if you don't have medical attention, or maybe and you may require a caregiver. So your perspective on health and well-being is very unique, because you probably have seen a lot of your comrades and people that you used to work with in professional football going through health challenges now. So that being said, can you tell us a little bit from your perspective, what are some of the important things people need to know when you're caring for somebody, and how important it is to really put this in the forefront to really prepare yourself for the possibility that you might have to take care of somebody in your family who suffers from dementia or just needs a caregiver, particularly as a Black man?
Sure. I think the biggest issue for men is their willingness to ask for help. That's kind of the biggest thing, 'cause especially as football players, right? And we want to think about other people who, where you have these very physical jobs, police officers, the military, football, sports. We're proud. We have a lot of pride, and our bodies mean everything to us because we're able to do things physically that maybe other people haven't been able to do. And one of the biggest issues that I come across with former football players, it's kind of this whole mentality, no pain, no gain. But in sports, they tell you there's a difference between being hurt and being injured. You can play through when you're hurt. You gotta suck it up and play through that. But when you're injured, you can't play. And so what happens is many times in our own mentality for us, we're figuring, well, that's no big deal. I can overcome that. Because, especially at the highest level, you have to overcome some pain. You just have to suck it up and deal with it. Well, life, when it comes to some of these issues that we're talking about, when they start coming on, one of the things that people do is we don't want to tell another person that we're having these problems. Hey, I'm really concerned. My memory is kind of slipping. I don't know if this is normal or not. We don't ever want to say that. I think that we see that throughout society, but in particular, people who are very proud, of what they've been able to do, they sometimes are the last people to ask for help. So if you are a caregiver or you're a loved one of someone who may be having some memory issues or may be having some physical problems and you're noticing it, that's the time where you have to introduce it early. I know it's really difficult. You can't just act like it's not there, and encourage that person to go and get checkups. Those things are really, really important.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say is the most important thing that you will have to develop as a caregiver when you go into that challenging time, and what types of tools and resources also are out there for people to get help for support? Because if you're taking care of somebody, you personally, you have to be healthy mentally and physically in order to do that.
Well, I think as hard as it may sound, we always say this, people ask me even when we talk about dementia, because that's what I study, and they say, well, what do you have to do, to protect yourself? And what we say is what's good for your heart is good for your head. And it's the same exact thing, even though it's the most important, it's most difficult for caregivers. But what you have to do is the three things. You have to make sure that you eat healthy, which is really hard sometimes because sometimes you're really challenged with time. Right. So how do you prepare healthy meals when you're looking after someone, depending on the stage of the need that they have? How do you prepare healthy when you don't have enough time for yourself? But you got to make sure that there's healthy meals, right? Because we know that there's not a lot of time to do a lot of exercise, but you got to make sure that you're physically active, make sure that you can go for a walk, make sure that you get some physical exercise, make sure that you eat properly. And what's really, really difficult, but one of the most important things is you have to take care of your sleep. You have to have sleep. Because one of the things people don't recognize that when it comes to dementia, one of the biggest risks for dementia is not sleeping well, having very poor sleep, and having sleep apnea. Sleep apnea cuts off oxygen to the brain. So if you have poor sleep hygiene, that puts you at a higher risk for having cognitive problems yourself, for potentially getting dementia yourself. So these are all the things that makes it very, very difficult to take care of someone else, but you have to find that way yourself. So I would just say this, I would reach out to the Alzheimer's Association, reach out to maybe your town that you live in, that they may have an aging adult program. They may have health, Department of Health find out what the local resources are available for you. Maybe they have programs that will provide healthy meals, deliver healthy, fruits and vegetables to your house. Find out where can you get support as you support someone else to make that job a little bit easier.
So your churches,
Sean, Sean, I want to add on to that. Reaching out to your local area agency on aging is very, very important very early. I had someone on the show maybe about a year or so ago whose mother had early dementia, and at the time she felt she was financially okay to be able to take care of her mom, and so she didn't sign up. When she went to sign up about 4 years later, when her finances got a little bit thin, she was like number 23,000 on the list.
Wow.
And then I think it took her another 4 years before she got to the top of the list. And so that's one of the things, go ahead and do things early as a part of that prepare planning earlier. Even if you think you don't need it, at least learn what's out there so that it could be a potential resource for you at a later time.
Now, can one of you speak on the use of insurance and also the financial part of taking care of somebody, because it can be a big, like Keisha just touched on, a big financial burden as well to take care of somebody going through dementia.
Well, I'll just say real quick, and then I'll turn it over to the other guests. But one of the most important things that I have found, and I do a lot of caregiver studies, even in my own home, all these kinds of things, is, when you're in the middle of a crisis, and this is why planning early, like your guest just said, is so important. When you're in the middle of the crisis, something happened in my family. My mom was really sick, and then, of course, my dad had caregiving needs as well. And it was stressful trying to get people involved with all of the things that needed to be done immediately. And one of my mentors, Dr. Robert Stern, who's a neuropsychologist, said to me, "You're in the middle of a crisis right now. It's really difficult to manage these things." And what was so crazy is that I didn't even know that I was in a crisis. I thought crisis was like when you're in a car accident and you immediately have to, go to the hospital or something. You get that call in the middle of the night. I didn't realize it was a crisis. And so we had a really difficult time in my house trying to figure out, what do we do? So when you talk about managing finances or knowing what financial resources are out there, one of the greatest things that I have seen is a resource is AARP. They have professionals that are available to you. You don't even have to be a member, that can help you with a checklist to, just to go down the list. Have you done this? Have you considered this? Have you reached out here? Those things early enough will, you want to get on top of those much earlier than when you're in the middle of that crisis and then trying to figure out what resources may or may not be available. And you may not even know what resources you need at that point. So identifying that early is really important.
And Keisha, what can you add to that?
Yeah, definitely. I always tell people with the VA, check with the VA, check your benefits and the different things like that. And that's why I was mentioned early on, if you become a caregiver, you may not even know about your parents' military history or your spouse's or something like that. So you want to find out about that information because there are resources out there that are available. I know when I was found out about my mom was getting assistance from the government, and she was actually discharged from the hospital because she didn't have the proper insurance to take care of her until she got a certain age. And so it is so important to make sure that you try to find those things and the different things that can assist you very, very early on.
No, I have to reiterate that because, that's really important when we talk about, touched on the idea of insurance. My mother, when she had her stroke and I was taking care of her, one of the things that was very, very helpful was the fact that we had records to her insurance information, long-term care, Medicare, all those different things, so we could get her into the hospital quickly without any kind of interruptions and get her great care. She ended up about maybe a month or so in the nursing home to get rehabilitation. And so making sure we had the resource, we didn't have the finances in place, that would not have been possible. This wouldn't have been possible at all. So I think it's really important for listeners to understand that don't wait to the last minute to think about these things, the cost, the care, as Mr. Turner, he talked about, and then also making sure that you have just a plan in place in order to deal with these things. Because the statistics show that this can happen to most families as we're an aging population. As we're getting older and we're living longer, many of us will find ourselves in that situation. And if you have the foresight, maybe it's not a bad idea to think about it for yourself and who's going to take care of you if you're in that situation.
Can I just jump in on piggyback on this, because I think this is really important, and I think the best way to maybe illustrate what we're talking about is a real situation. I have a very good friend who played for the Detroit Lions for years. I won't mention his name, but he has a situation now where he doesn't live in Detroit any longer. His sister is in Detroit. His mom and dad are in Detroit, and so both his parents are having some issues, and so now they're having to be primary caregivers. My friend, he knows that his dad was in the military, but he and I grew up in that generation where our parents never taught us anything. It was always children are to be seen and not heard. So we didn't know we don't very much know about our parents in, personal life. He knows his dad was in the military, but he doesn't know how long he was in the military, has no idea about those records, doesn't know what benefits that he has, coming to him, or doesn't know what benefits he's actually even taking care of, doesn't know anything about that. So he asked me, well, what do I do? So I first told him, you got to get the copy of the DD-214, right? You also have to then find out what if any, benefits are available to him. Is he getting retirement benefits? Is he getting any health benefits that are available to him? Because who knows, his disability benefits, are they available? Then we have to talk about what kind of housing benefits he may be, eligible for. My friend said to me, hey, can you give me a list? I don't even know where to start. I said, does your dad have a primary care physician in the military? He didn't know. So these are all the things that we're talking about that need to be done very early. And unfortunately, our parents sometimes don't tell us about these things, but we are going to have to now, as we get into that caregiving role and we're taking care of our parents, we're going to have to know what these things are.
That is Robert W. Turner II, former professional football player and currently assistant professor in the Department of Clinical Research and Leadership at George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Science. And of course, always Keisha L. Jackson, U.S. Air Force veteran and family caregiver. And also check out Mr. Turner's book. He has written a book that was called Not for Long, The Life and Career of the NFL Athlete, available on Amazon and Oxford University Press. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.
We have in our chase bags, we have a care package of hygiene, we have shaving equipment, we have razors, and for the women we have the same personal hygiene items for them as well. And we want to say thank you for their service. This is Chase Bank. Thank you very much.
People in the neighborhood, free haircuts, and service and food. Look good.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service.
Okay. On behalf of Cliff Kelley, America's Heroes Group, we sincerely thank Chase Bank for coming where it matters to help homeless veterans have a hot meal today and a care package. We are sincerely grateful for this partnership. Yeah.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group. Hear your voice where we connect the disconnected intentionally.
Who is Cliff Kelley, the governor of talk radio, the icon of radio throughout the world?
Chauncey Spencer II and I, again, share a special relationship. His late great father, Tuskegee Airman Chauncey E. Spencer, took me as a child on my first airplane ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is something that people need to see. Often we don't, do the things to show how great our people are. It changes the paradigm of how people think about us, about the collective consciousness of what it means to be us.
And we've been having great conversations about trying to get more African Americans into aviation. And we got a bill that we're trying to get passed that would allow the Pell Grant to be used to help finance aviation education.
This is where I started with this entire conversation by saying, if it were not for America's Heroes Group, I would have given up. So I want to
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group, this time with our Roundtable Mental Health Matters with our partner, NAMI, Contra, Costa. Today is Saturday, December 3rd, 2022. December is AIDS Awareness and National Human Rights Month. Our host is Kelley. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Arna Productions. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. And we have our partner on the line, Gigi Crowder. She's the executive director of NAMI Contra Costa in California. NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, an advocacy group founded by family members of people with mental illness. How you doing, Gigi?
I'm doing great.
So we want to talk about the SAD, which is Seasonal Affective Disorders, aka the Winter Blues. Not to be confused with sudden adult death syndrome with the SADs, but SAD, Seasonal Affective Disorders. So what is SAD? And also, what do we call it the Winter Blues?
Well, I think most people recognize that in order for them to get through the days that are darker, where we're going through the winter months, that their mood may actually be a little less joyful. And so seasonal affective disorder is very real, and it affects about 7% of the population, those who are aware that they have this mood decline. It can contribute to some of the challenges that people who already live with mental health challenges experience. Those who live with bipolar disorder or schizophrenia generally don't do as well during the winter months, although seasonal affective disorder can be individualized, and some people could even have a difficult time because it's summer. But mostly individuals experience what we call the winter blues, as you spoke to earlier, and can look at periods of their life where things aren't working as well for them. And I know myself personally, if I take a history lesson around times in my life when I just wasn't feeling the best, it's because I literally crave the sun, and I'm more joyous in the months where I'm able to get out and be more productive. Seasonal affective disorder causes a lot of individuals to sleep more, have less energy, and not achieve the daily task. They kind of put things off. But it's very real, and can be attributed to a chemical imbalance as well, from not getting the vitamin D that we need to thrive.
Wow. From what I understand, that this is so it's seasonal depression essentially for that's one of the major symptoms, I guess. Mm-hmm. But 80% of the cases are women, which I thought was interesting. Only 20%
women report things. Yeah, women talk about things like this. So I'm not. When I see statistics like that, I have to think about the fact that in schizophrenia, more men than women actually are diagnosed with it, and that's cultural. And then when I look at things that speak to a person having control over it, men don't talk about things like I'm a little depressed just because, and they might not make the connection with why or the history of it happens during certain periods of time. So I challenge some of the statistics that we come up with around seasonal affective disorder. I think it's much more common. I don't think football is that big of a distraction to keep people from going into a place that they're not as healthy.
I don't know. Football is pretty powerful in the United States. I don't know. You got the NBA, too, in the time, too, to talk about. But the thing of it is that I think it was really important that we touched on is the fact that it's not simply in your head. It's actually a chemical response to what's going on in your body that affects your brain. So it's not like just get over it or cheer up or, read a happy book. it's a lot more complicated than that. And then it looks like diet and nutrition can play a major part. You mentioned vitamin D as something that's important. What other things can people do, or what types of things should they be eating to try to defend themselves against this thing that could happen?
Well, it's also, just because it's winter doesn't mean you shouldn't be drinking a lot of water. We always ask people to drink more water through the summer months because we have to stay hydrated. But it's also true, the diets that we have should be pretty consistent throughout the year for the most important balance of nutrition. And so it's important for us to remember to drink our water, eat plenty of vegetables, etc. But I also want to talk a little about the light therapy, because when we talk about vitamin D and we talk about the fact that people get into this space more quickly through the winter months, it's because our days are shorter. And so right now I'm in California. It's dark, and I want to be home usually around 5 o'clock p.m. So we have to look at the fact that the days are shorter, there's less activity, and I think women might talk about it more because there's a safety factor and they want to be home and where it's safe. And men have more opportunities to feel safe, and so they don't need to get home. So they kind of have to work through some things that women struggle more with around that. So it's many factors when you start talking about why one gender might be more impacted by another. And then diet. I have started using a light therapy, my own form. I try and cut on all the lights in my home this time of year because I think it's really important for me to get the proper amount of sleep and be in the right rhythm with my sleep patterns. And so that's another symptom of sleeping too much and then having no energy even though you're sleeping. And overeating is another symptom of seasonal affective disorder. And then I kind of think about bears and hibernating, and I think it's kind of natural, actually.
So what's the difference then between, say, just not digging cold weather versus having SAD or having seasonal affective disorder? How do we know when you're just down because it's snow outside and you can't go do the things you like to do in the summertime, or maybe it's too cold to go out, versus really something that's a little more serious?
Well, I mean, it is associated with people who live with clinical depression. So it's in our DSM, so our Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, and it hasn't changed very much. It's not classified anymore as a mood disorder, but now it's more looking at seasonal patterns and recognizing that usually it's a reoccurrence for people who have major depressive disorder. And that's definitely found in a diagnosis for some individuals. So I think that's kind of the symptom, and a lot of individuals have a difficult time with understanding that seasonal patterns can affect, as I said earlier, people who live with already severe mental illnesses, such as major depression and bipolar disorder.
So it seems like a double whammy. So people who have to have bipolar disorder and suffer from clinical depression are more susceptible. So is that posed in a serious risk to people that are in that category or have those conditions?
Yeah, I mean, working at a facility, NAMI, that receives phone calls, we always prepare ourselves for the fact that during the winter months, we're likely going to get more phone calls. Because individuals need structure when they live with severe mental illnesses, and then the pattern is broken a lot for them. And so individuals seem to just have more exacerbated symptoms during the winter months. And you got to also remember that's when the holidays are there too. So if people have grief on top of it, it's their first Christmas without someone, or they had a bad breakup during this time of the year, then it's going to impact. And so anything that is detrimental or causes problems for people who don't live with a mental illness, just as COVID did, is going to be more pronounced in a person who already lives with the mental health challenges.
So you touched on the idea of routines, particularly for people with bipolar disorder and clinical depression. So what types of routines or daily activities can someone get into, even if they're not clinically depressed, or maybe they don't have bipolar disorder, but they definitely feel like, because of the symptoms we described, depression, overeating, hypersomnia, or insomnia, they have something going on. What kind of routines or things can they do in their everyday life to try to help the situation or make them feel better?
The light therapy is the most promising. So you can purchase bright white lights and make sure you have an incandescent lamp. That's what I started doing. And then I also noticed that, I have to get ahead of this. If I'm going to, be as productive and get the things on my to-do list done, I have to be very intentional about putting a structure and a plan in place. So for me, it includes, even though it's going to be darker in the mornings when I wake up here in California, it's still dark at 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. If my intention is to go to the gym, I have to do a lot more work to make sure I just get up and go. So we recognize that working out and being physically active actually improves our mental health. And so when you're a person who's prone to seasonal affective disorder, you must put a plan in place. And most therapists will work with people about getting ahead of it so that they don't fall into the winter blues or the slumps by them being more proactive.
So describe for us what light therapy is, because a lot of people confuse that with tanning beds. They think that getting into a tanning bed is light therapy, and I guess that's not. It's actually a bad thing.
Well, I mean, it depends. It could be a bad thing, but the bright light therapy has proven to be effective. And for
how
me,
how does that work, though? What do you do when you do the light therapy?
Well, you sit in front of the light box with your eyes open, not staring into the light, but just kind of for 30 to 60 minutes. There were studies that showed that when people who live with diagnosis of SAD sit in front of that and kind of allow the light to brighten their spirits. In some ways, I hate to say it that way, but that's the way it was explained to me. They can experience improvement during the first week even.
And so there's a box you can buy online, or is it expensive? So you buy this box, and it's basically just like a lighted box, basically, or just a light shining on you, or can you just put it get a bulb and put it into a regular light fixture? How does that work?
Well, I mean, I think the animal that I have learned to kind of mimic is the cat. You might know that cats will often find a light spot shining through the window. Mm-hmm. And so even though we're in the winter months, you can get the same type, I think, of benefit from finding a spot in the house when the sun is shining to lay in that area and get the more natural light. But for many people, they don't have a light box, but they have taken a portion of their home and put brighter than typical lights in it, and they spend more time in that room than they will any other, and that's proven to be successful. I don't have a light box, but I do have a room that's always light and bright, and I will go in there and make sure that I spend at least an hour in there doing, especially the weekends. I'm pretty busy during the week, but during the weekend, that's when I kind of get charged up like a battery by going into that space if I'm going to be home most of the day. And that's what was encouraged when I went to a conference about seasonal affective disorder. Another is we know that it's a chemical imbalance, so finding alternative methods to get vitamin D when you can't get it directly from the sun is also important.
Okay, so taking supplements for vitamin D, or getting a room. Maybe it's not a bad idea if you're prone to having seasonal affective disorder to set up a room in the house that maybe gets a lot of sunlight, open up the drapes and let the sunlight kind of bathe in the sunlight. Or, you know, if you can afford it, maybe getting a light box, which is, I guess, rated and has the proper bulbs in it. Or I'm thinking out of the box a little bit, but getting maybe daylight bulbs. LED bulbs come in daylight, and they also come in regular warm light, like we have with the incandescent bulbs. So you can get LED bulbs that mimic. I think it's 5,000 K, or 5,000 K is the frequency they use for daylight. So if it says on the box 5,000 K as a color temperature, that is a daylight bulb. Put that in maybe, and sit in front of that. Would that work?
That's been proven to be successful, and as I said earlier, physical exercise has been helpful for individuals as well because of the release of serotonins and things that may not produce as well during the winter months. So if you're not getting enough vitamin D, sometimes other chemicals that you need, or vitamins and supplements that you need, some of the ones that, help, that are antidepressants, natural antidepressants, you're not getting as much. So sometimes you have to take not just vitamin D supplements, but maybe some other serotonin and other, even some people take melatonin because of the sleep pattern, and they want to make sure that they don't fall into a pattern of sleeping, not getting enough sleep or sleeping too much. And of course you have to do all of this with, you mentioned suntan machines, and I kind of cringed a little bit because some communities are at higher threat than others for skin cancer, but we're all at risk for skin cancer.
But to be clear, a tanning bed is not the same thing as light therapy, so people get that mixed up.
No, it's not.
Yeah, so that's not probably may not help you from the reports say. It doesn't really benefit you as far as seasonal affective disorder or winter blues. Now the thing is, it's interesting. You mentioned this earlier. Is that there's two types. So some people get it in the spring and summer, and they have the opposite symptoms of people that get it in the fall and winter. So people in the fall get depressed, they overeat, and have hypersomnia where they're sleeping all the time like a bear. But people in the spring and summer who have it then, they get anxiety, they lose their appetite, and they have insomnia, they can't sleep. So, I mean, so it's these types of treatments. So a person who's going through summer SAD or summer seasonal affective disorder may not do the light therapy. But definitely the maybe vitamin D and melatonin, those types of things might help, particularly with us having a problem with sleeping. And of course, I would say this, recommend, this always, do not get your medical advice from America's Heroes Group. We're not doctors. Well, Dr. Arnold is a doctor. No. He is a doctor. Yeah. But we are not diagnosing you and trying to give you medical advice. Make sure you talk to your doctor, talk to your own doctor, get your own specialized treatment. Make sure that your body can handle what is best for you, because unless a doctor is seeing you and seeing what your specific needs are, don't just take advice from an infomercial, especially when it comes to your health. Don't turn on a talk show or, this is to give you information and knowledge about what's out there so you know what questions to ask when you go see your doctor. You make it more aware of what's happening if you have these symptoms and are going through this. Now you can start the conversation with your doctor and actually find out what you need to do. It might be vitamin D, it might be vitamin D and melatonin, it might be something totally different. You might be allergic to vitamin D and melatonin for all we know.
Exactly.
So I think that's really important to get that out there. Yeah, I think it's really important because we
thanks for saying that.
Yeah, because we see this all the time and on TV and on social media, all these fads and people telling you to do this and take that and eat this, and people are getting all kinds of mixed results. And it's not helpful. And then what we're trying to do, we're trying to help veterans and help people in the community at large do better and be better and live and experience better things in their life. So we got to give you the straight talk and be honest about it. We're not trying to sell you anything. We want to make sure we're honest about what is real and what's not real. SAD is a real thing. I've been hearing about this since I was a kid. So, I mean, that's something you definitely want to talk to your doctor about if you're experiencing these things. So now, so what else would you say is important for people to know and understand about diet and exercise, but then also making sure that you don't not take this seriously, where you just don't just overlook some of these symptoms that maybe people are experiencing?
Yeah, I mean, Seth, it's a type of major depressive disorder. So, I mean, we have to take it seriously. I appreciate you for the disclaimer, because when people call NAMI, I say, okay, we offer resources and referrals, but we offer non-clinical services. You're going to need to talk to your own therapist or doctor, because every individual experiences things differently based on their body chemistry. So the symptoms of winter SAD is so different from the symptoms that some might experience with what we call springtime it wouldn't be blues. It's more just a lack of energy in the springtime. And so the response that each individual has is different, but it is really important because we do note that summer depression, winter blues, it all can be, if untreated, lead to suicidal ideation. So when people start having feelings of hopelessness or worthlessness and, you know, just basically thoughts of suicide because they're living with this depressive disorder, sometimes when we've talked to people and brought up, have you talked to your doctor about SAD, it's been a relief for them because there is some things that they can do to improve the outcome. So when we get those calls from some communities, it's like, I've never heard of that before. And so they can be more in control once they've heard about it, and then they follow up with the professional that can best support them to identify the tools that they can employ to help them. So the exercise part, as I said before, was really important. No matter what diagnosis or not having a diagnosis, we are more and more recommending individuals to get control of their physical health through diet and exercise more than ever, and we're noting that it's really making a big difference with their mental health. Even when they live with bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, it's still really important to take care of your physical health through what you eat and the activity.
So not to beat a dead horse, but we talk about diet, and I know a lot of people don't like to hear the word diet. Exercise is a whole other topic, but diet, people definitely sometimes have touchy feelings about the diet word, the D word. Yeah. But there are certain things we talked about. You should be eating vegetables is a good idea, always good for your body. What are some things, because this is after the holidays, we just had Thanksgiving. There's a lot of food that we eat and consume during this time, and then, you know, as sometimes we have what's called comfort food. It's out that we sometimes indulge in because it maybe gives us a temporary feeling of calm or warmth or whatever. What are some things we need to be careful about over-consuming?
Well, the sweets, and this time of year they're in your face. You know, no matter where you go, people are hot chocolate. It becomes popular. All of the winter desserts are very popular. It just kicks off with Halloween candy, and it just continues. So, you know, you have to recognize that if you have it around you in your home, you're going to likely eat it because this time of year is the year where our body starts craving sweets. And it's because largely we're at home more often, and we are looking and seeking comfort, and most of us find comfort in things that are not healthy for us. So working on eliminating certain things from your diet, substituting sugary beverages with, you know, the flavored water type that doesn't have the high level of sugar. And when you use the word diet, we're not talking, I never use that word thinking about weight loss. I'm always thinking about what you eat each day is a part of your diet, not with a plan for losing weight. So nutritionally, we should definitely be taking in more healthy fruits and vegetables, and you should see more color on your plate. Having more color on your plate actually improves, if you're eating it, improves your mental health. Wow. When you have a diet that's not rich with the colors that vegetable foods get used, likely you're not going to be as healthy. And then drinking water, as I said earlier, but leaning toward the vegetables is really important. Even more so, I know that I do a better job with eating fruits through the summer because there are more options of the foods, the type of fruits that I like to eat. The nectarine, the peaches, the plums. So you have to do a little more work during the winter months to find the varieties, but it does benefit you around the waist, but also mentally.
Gigi Crowder, Executive Director of NAMI Contra, Costa in California. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Glenda?
Wonderful, wonderful shows today. Wow. If my voice sounds a little heavy, it's because I'm dealing with the flu that turned into walking pneumonia. So that's the thing now. The new pneumonia is the flu. Okay, so thank you all for listening this Saturday. We're always so grateful to our live Facebook and YouTube viewers, the global listening audience. You always can reach us at 312-803-2618. We're located at 155 North Wacker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, regarding comments, concerns about affordable housing, so benefits and other things that you would like information about, or maybe you have some comments about some shows that you want us to do more research on. And you can always go to our podcast to listen to past shows, just in case you thought you got information and you need more information. So yeah, feel free to just visit America's Heroes Group and get informed and get connected. To our new technical producer, oh boy, technical engineer producer, Lady Kaya. What a ball of professionalism she is. I'm going to truly enjoy working with you. She's passionate. She's beautiful. Welcome to America's Heroes Group. To our digital media producer, Ivan Ortega, who has my back 100%. He does so much work when he's not here on the show. He lets me call him anytime I get ready, even though it gets on his nerve. He is don't shake your head. He is 100% team. Thank you, sweetheart. You're the best. Sean, you are a super duper co-host. Keisha told me to tell you, she loved the way you interview because you take it to a different level in terms of asking questions. And that's a good thing.
It's all about the people and their stories.
That's where it is.
Without them, it would be no Sean.
That's where it is. So to great shows today, our partners, Clean Energy Infrastructure, to veteran legislative voice, to our military family caregiver, to military mental health matters, NAMI, Costa, to all of you guys. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for being a part of America's Heroes Group, because it's you that makes it matter. Get vaccinated. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.